Hey, what's up everyone? This is Snackbox. Guys, we have some crazy summoning events for the next couple of days. We have a really nice summon pool for the Sylvan Watchers, but also a lot of guaranteed epics for the Mikaga fusion. So let's jump right into it. So let's start off with the guaranteed epic champions for Lady Mikaga. Today we are going to start with Locwain, and you need 40 ancient shards for each one of them, as usual, right? And this event is going to last 24 hours, and then we're gonna have the next one. So as you can see here in the official Raid Shadow Legends Discord, there is this announcement and the schedule. So today we are going to have Locwain. Then from tomorrow there's gonna be, however you pronounce this name, from the High Elves. And then on Wednesday there's going to be Endelia as a guaranteed epic champion from Ancient Shards, and all of them will cost you 40 ancient shards each. That means 120 ancient shards for all of these epics. Now, if you're a newer player and you have enough ancient shards, that's actually a pretty solid event, because it gets you one step closer to Lady Mikaga. Also, if you're not a new player and you're still missing that 1, 2, or all 3 of those epics, this is still pretty good. 40 ancient shards is not really a lot if you're trying to go for Lady Mikaga. And Lady Mikaga is very, very strong. You can use her almost in every content of the game. So that is actually pretty cool for people that haven't done the Lady Mikaga fusion yet. But also we have this insane summon pool. So for 5 days we are going to have this Sylvan Watchers Summon Pool, and in here we have the new Unity champion from the Sylvan Watchers, and this guy seems like an absolute powerhouse. And the reason why I'm saying this is because his whole kit has a synergy with continuous heals, and we all know Senna is kind of for Chimera what Trunda is for Hydra, so this guy might perform really, really crazy if you pair him with Senna. So let's take a look. His A1 is an AoE attack, which doesn't really matter for Chimera, but is not that bad for Hydra, for example, if it hits hard. I don't know the multipliers, I don't know how much damage he can do. That's like the only thing where the big question mark is. But the stun also doesn't help in any of the content. But for like dungeons or whatever, faction wars, that A1 is pretty cool. Also, it ignores 20% of each target's resistance for each continuous heal. As I said, for bosses it doesn't really matter because you can't stun them. Then the A2, there's really a lot to read here, but that's just because you can place this skill on an enemy as well as on an ally. So if you select an enemy as a target, it decreases the duration of all buffs on all enemies by 1 turn. So it's kind of like a budget strip. Places a 5% poison debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and an additional poison for 2 turns for each continuous heal buff on this champion. These debuffs cannot be resisted, then instantly activates all poison debuffs on all enemies. So that to me sounds absolutely busted, right? Because in Chimera, for example, I'm struggling to place poisons on the Viper form in order to complete it. And this guy does place so many poisons if you can stack up continuous heals on him that he probably can complete this poison trial on the Viper form in 1 turn. I don't know if he will deal enough damage to compete, but this alone here sounds pretty interesting to me. So basically he's a poison activation champ that could technically also one-shot waves if you have enough continuous heals on him. So that is really, really interesting and opens up, new themes for Chimera or even dungeons. Now, if you select an ally as a target, it increases the duration of all buffs. If you select an enemy, it will decrease the duration of all buffs. If you select an ally, it will increase the duration of all buffs. And then instantly activates all continuous heal buffs on all allies, places a perfect whale buff on this champion for 2 turns, and also places a continuous heal buff on this champion and another continuous heal buff for each ally for 2 turns. So he's not only able to put out crazy numbers of poison, he can also put out crazy numbers of continuous heals. And we all know how continuous heals work with Senna, so that is absolutely crazy. And then on top of that, it fills this champion's turn meter by 15% for each buff or debuff placed by the skill. And if you place enough poisons, you can most likely get an extra turn, right? Very, very insane. But basically, you would have to have like 6 continuous heals on him in order to place 7 poisons, and then you would theoretically get an extra turn. He would place them, activate them, and you will get an extra turn. If you want to place the continuous heals here, you would place 1 on him, right? And then let's say in a Chimera team you would have 4 other allies. That would mean 4 more continuous heals, 5 in total, and that would mean 75% turn meter. If you would use it in Hydra, where you have, 5 more allies, you would get 90% turn meter. Either way, you will get a lot of turn meter, and that's all that counts for Chimera, for example, to get as many turns as possible. Also, he buffs Perfect Whale on himself, so you need that as well for some of the trials in Chimera. And yeah, absolutely crazy A2. Then on the A3, and this is also where it gets very interesting, because this damage from this skill is based on enemy max HP. So not only can he boost turn meter, place continuous heals or poisons, and buff Perfect Whale, he can also do massive amounts of damage, most likely because it's based on enemy max HP. The Chimera, for example, has a lot of HP, and that's where this scale is really, really good. So, attacks one enemy before attacking, has a 100% chance of removing all buffs from the target and placing a 60% decreased defense debuff and a 25% weaken debuff on the target for 2 turns. Will ignore 20% of the target's resistance for each continuous heal buff on this champion. So basically, if you have 5 continuous heal buffs on this champion, you will ignore 100% of the target's resistance, and you don't need any accuracy whatsoever. And that is pretty crazy to me. Also, if you pair him now with other Sylvan Watchers, with 1 faction ally, you will remove all buffs from all enemies if the initial target is killed, and this buff removal cannot be resisted. Doesn't really matter too much for bosses, Hydra, you're not killing the Hydra heads, you're decapitating them, and also not for the Chimera. With 2 faction allies, it will ignore 5% of the target's defense for each poison debuff on them and each continuous heal buff on this champion. If you have, theoretically, 10 poisons up and 10 continuous heals on this champion, which is probably hard to do, but maybe it's possible, I don't know, you will ignore 100% of the target's defense with 2 faction allies. But even if you just have like 3 or 4 poisons, that's again 15 or 20% defense ignore, and then you have 1 or 2 or 3 continuous heals, another 10-15%. So you can get up to 50% easily. Also, most likely you're gonna use a lethal merciless set on him, and have that additional defense ignore. So very, very interesting. And with 3 faction allies, if the initial target is under a poison debuff, also attacks all other enemies. So if you have a poison up, this becomes an AoE enemy max HP hit. Very, very interesting for Hydra, for example. For Chimera, not so much, but for Hydra, very good. The damage dealt is proportional to the initial target's max HP and how many poison debuffs are on them. If the initial target is a boss or a minion, the damage dealt is equal to 10% of their max HP. So I don't know how this skill will scale when it depends on, the target's max HP. Kind of obvious, but how many poisons debuffs are on them? So that is kind of like the question. But if the initial target is a boss or a minion, it will be 10% of their max HP. Also, as you can see here, if you book this, you can get another 35% more damage, and that's pretty interesting. And also, it's a free turn cooldown. And this skill as well, you have to book it 2 times, and overall, he doesn't need a lot of books. So it's pretty crazy, right? Like, he needs 4 books here, that's 6. And the A1 doesn't really need to be booked, but it's 9 books in total. So very, very easy to book. Then we have the passive here, right? Like, he also has a crazy passive, and he will ignore 50% of a target's defense when attacking while under a whale or a perfect whale buff. Remember, he's placing whale with this A2 on himself, and this champion receives 30% less damage from enemies when not under a whale or perfect whale buff. Very, very interesting. Also, and now it becomes really crazy to me, with one faction ally, each continuous heal buff on this champion increases their crit rate by 20%. So basically, if you have 5 continuous heal buffs, he's at 100% crit rate. So theoretically, if you can keep those buffs up, you don't have to build them with crit rate. That's pretty strong. With 2 faction allies, each time a continuous heal buff activates on this champion, also fills the turn meter by 8%. Can you imagine how many turns this guy will take with 2 faction allies and a Senna in the team? The turn meter fills will be insane. With 3 faction allies, each time a continuous heal buff activates on this champion or an ally, increases this champion's damage by 5%, and it stacks up to 150%. In my opinion, that is absolutely busted. Completely crazy. 150% more damage. That's crazy. All you have to do is activate 30 continuous heals, and you will do that easily with a Senna, for example. You can also do it without Senna, but I think Senna is the ultimate combo here. Crazy. With this aura also 25% crit rate, and all battles speed aura, but only applies to Sylvan Watchers. Yeah, really, really interesting. I think you can basically build this guy in the right team with 0 crit rate and do enough damage. And when we take a look at the Sylvan Watchers, we have Pedrick here, right, which has ally attacks, and he places increased attack on him, and he also does place continuous heals. Then we have Firo, which has the decreased speed, increased resistance, perfect whale, block buffs, decreased accuracy, R base, which is basically a really strong combination with Senna as well, because of those continuous heals that she can place on her A3 in the alternate form. So that's already 3 faction allies that are pretty strong. And if you use this guy, Keldor, with Pedrick, Firo, and R-Base, and then add a Senna, I think you have a very, very solid team. I'm actually pretty curious to see some of the teams that are gonna come up with this champion in Chimera. I think they're going to break records with it. So yeah, I think one of the best Unity champions is definitely this guy, paired with like Fina and Teox. I think those 3 are kind of like the top 3 Unity champions. But also all the other champions in here are very, very good, right? As I said, we have Firo in here, which pairs very well with him. We have Pedrick here. He also has continuous heals. Glaycat, a very nice reviver. So Elva also places continuous heals and blocks debuffs and has, a revive. So a lot of these legendary Sylvan Watchers pair very well with him and are also pretty strong on their own. So yeah, very, very strong summon pool. If you're looking for epics, a Deity, for example, is very much a carry for me nowadays in Cursed City. He basically is the reason why I can clear some of the stages. Then we have Duodan, which is also pretty solid with a taunt, right? very nice champion. Creodan used in a lot of Fire Knight teams with the freeze, so that's actually pretty solid too. Ornn was always very good with the poisons and poison activation. He can actually be a very solid clan boss champion, or he can also solo some stuff. Roella, right, with decreased defense, weaken and decreased speed on the same skill, and also Locwain, which we have a guaranteed event for today. So yeah, overall a very solid summoning pool, and as I said, I can't wait to see some teams going crazy with this new Unity champion. So besides buying Prism summons right here from the crystal offers, right, which you can actually do through Aptoide if you want to save money, you can also use my personal promo code in it and save 5% from the promo code alone, and you can save up to 25% cash back if you're spending on Aptoide. So that is actually pretty cool. A lot of players that are using Aptoide with my code are very happy with it, but also I don't want to encourage you to spend more than usual. Just, you know, if you're a spender, you might want to consider using Aptoide. If you're not a spender yet, I don't want to encourage you to start spending, because I'm not spending myself, right? I'm playing this as a free-to-play. But if you're spending anyway, you might want to check out Aptoide. I'm going to put it in the description below. Now we have the chance to get a Prism summon from the Gear Ascension tournament. Previously, we were always able to get it from the Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament. And the difference now is that on the Gear Ascension tournament, we can also farm the Shogun. Also, the energy cost is probably going to be a lot higher than for the Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament. I don't know for sure yet, but last time it cost us around 4k energy, a little bit more even, to get the last milestone, where it would have cost me personally around 2.5k energy to get the last milestone, because if you are able to run the Sand Devil fast in a couple of turns, you will get more points, right, for the Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament. As the name says, it depends on in how many turns you can do the dungeon. But here it doesn't matter how fast you can do the dungeon. The only thing that matters here is the rewards you get. So it's based on the oils, the amount of oils and extracts. So theoretically, you can run solo teams for Shogun or Sand Devil. I think Empress can actually solo the Sand Devil, and I uploaded a video last week on how to solo the Shogun with our base. So if you want to, you know, double dip here, get points for the Gear Ascension tournament to get this Prism summon, and also get points for the Champ Train tournament, there are a couple of options that you could do here to solo those dungeons. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Very solid summon pool. Also keep an eye on the Gear Ascension tournament. Maybe you want to check out my solo Shogun run with our base. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also hit the thumbs up, and see you in the next one.